Hello, everybody. This is Jimmy, and you're reading with Jimmy. We're reading the epic poem Beowulf. This is part 2 of 8 parts, translated by Burton Raphael. And we left off with Beowulf landing on Danish soil because he heard about the monster Grendel, who was eating all of Hrothgar's men. Comes at night. Oh, what a monster. So they land in this, and then one of the guards from the Danes says, "Tell me who you are." Their leader answered him, Beowulf, unlocking words from deep in his breast. Beowulf says, "We are Geats, men who follow Hygelac. My father was a famous soldier, known far and wide as a leader of men. His name was Ethgol, and his life lasted many winters. Wise men all over the earth surely remember him still." Now, remember, when we're talking about that, they go through their genealogy, right? The hierarchy of their families, because they want to be recognized. There's nothing written down. There's no newspapers. There's no internet. This is Vikings. They sail ships. They use the stars for navigation. It's nothing modern about these warriors. These are warriors, fighters. We learned in the first reading about the Danish leader, Hrothgar, right? And his father who would conquer lands and bring riches, and he built the mead hall, Herat, right? That's where Grendel comes to eat his soldiers. So Beowulf is telling him about his hierarchy, his background. "And we have come seeking your prince, Healfdene's son," which is Hrothgar, "protector of his people, and we're only in friendship. Instruct us, watchman, and help us with your words. Our errand is a great one. Our business with your glorious king of the Danes is no secret. There's nothing dark or hidden in our coming. And if we've heard the truth and have been told honestly, that your country is cursed by some strange vicious creature that hunts only at night and that no one has seen. It's said, watchman," he doesn't know the guy's name yet that challenged him, "that he has slaughtered your people." Now remember, he's confirming what he's heard. He's confirming. They got to confirm that. That's why they're there. Otherwise, there's going to be a fight. They're landing on Danish soil. Maybe they think this guy thinks they're pirates. "Your people brought terror to the darkness. Perhaps Hrothgar can hunt here in my heart for some way to drive this devil out." Let me go back. "It is said, watchman, that he has slaughtered your people." He, being this creature, Grendel, "brought terror to the darkness." So in darkness, there's terror. "Perhaps Hrothgar can hunt here in my heart." In other words, examine me, Hrothgar, for some way to drive the devil out. "If anything will ever end the evils afflicting your wise and famous lord. Here, he can cool his burning sorrow." Here, where's here? In Beowulf's heart. He's offering himself to Hrothgar. "Or else he may see his suffering go on forever, for as long as Herat towers high on your hills." So, in other words, trust me, you got to get me to the king. The mounted officer answered him bluntly, the brave watchman. That's who this is. The watchman says, "A soldier should know the difference between words and deeds, and keep that knowledge clear in his brain. And I believe your words. I trust in your friendship. So go forward, weapons and armor and all, into Denmark. I'll guide you, myself, and my men will guard your ship. Keep it safe here on our shores, your fresh-tarred boat, and they'll watch it well until the curving prow carries across the sea to Geatland, a chosen warrior who bravely does battle with the creature haunting our people." So in other words, he's saying, we'll watch your boat, right, while you go do this thing. "Who survives that horror unhurt and goes home bearing our love." Now, does he know that's going to happen? He doesn't, but he trusts Beowulf. So whatever Beowulf said here seems to have rang true with the watchman. So because he's letting them through with their armor. And then they moved on. And their boat lay moored, tied tight to its anchor. Glittering at the top of their golden helmets, wild boar helmets gleamed. So that you can imagine their board heads gleam. So wild boar heads. Their helmets had wild boars on their helmets. Shining decorations, swinging as they marched, erect like guards, like sentinels, as though ready to fight. So this is a pretty impressive crew that Beowulf's brought with him. And they marched, Beowulf and his men and their guide, until they could see the gables of Hera, covered in hammered gold and glowing in the sun, that most famous of all dwellings. So Hera, the mead hall, was famous. It had a reputation that Hrothgar had built, towering majestic in its glittering roofs, visible as far across the land. Their guide reined in his horse, pointing to the hall built by Hrothgar for the best and bravest of his men. The path was plain, they could see their way, and then he spoke. Now I must leave you. Where's he going? Can you guess? Back to the hills to watch for any other boats coming. May the Lord our God protect your coming and going. The sea is my job, keeping these coasts free of invaders, bands of pirates. I must go back. So the watchman brought him where they could see the mead hall, right? Herod. And now he's going back to watch for any other interlopers. Chapter 5. The path that he had shown them was paved. Now, remember who's narrating? It's the third-person narrator. We believe what he's telling us. So this was paved and cobbled like a Roman road. That's important. Like a Roman road. So Rome's reach was great. You're going to have to understand what Rome did in the ancient world. Otherwise, the poet, the narrator, would not have used this. They arrived with their mail shirts, glittering, silver shining links, clanking an iron song as they came. So they're moving and their armor is clanking. But can you imagine it? Boom, right? Clanking. Sea weary still. So they're a little bit, jet lag. Or should I say sea lag? They set their broad battle-hardened shields in rows along the wall. So imagine them entering the hall, and then they put their broad battle-hardened shields, which means they got some dents in them, in rows along the wall, and then they stretched themselves on Herod's benches. These are long. Remember, the way the hall in your imagination you should build it is an open in the middle with benches all along, so people can just sit next to each other. It's not like a stadium, right? This is a mead hall. Their armor rang, and their ashwood spears stood in a line, gray tipped and straight. And the Geats' war gear were honored weapons. These Norsemen, these Vikings, these Danish, these Geats, they took very much pride in their weapons. Remember, I mentioned in the earlier first reading that they used to name their swords. So they come into the mead hall, and a Danish warrior asked who they were and their names and their fathers. See how he asks for the lineage? Who are you and who's your father? If you've ever met European people, I've been married to an Italian for a long time. Whenever Italians meet each other, the first question that they ask, is, what town are you from? They want to know what town you're from and who you know from that town, and then they start relating if they know the town. It's the same thing here. Same thing everywhere. You go now, you say, what state you from? Where are you from? People don't ask me who my father is. But they did in those days. Where have you carried these gold-carved shields from? Their silvery shirts and helmets. And those spears set out in long lines. I'm Hrothgar's herald and captain. Strangers have come here before, but never so freely and so bold. We've never had anybody marching in like you guys. And you come too proudly to be exiles. And you're not poverty by your heart's high courage has brought you to Hrothgar. He was answered by a famous soldier, the Geat's proud prince. He was answered by a famous soldier. The third person narrator could have said Beowulf answered him, but he doesn't. Remember, this is an epic poem. He's reciting it to people. In those days, they would recite the poems, not read them. I'm reading to you because we're reading with Jimmy. He was answered by a famous soldier, the Geat's proud prince, and that is, in fact, Beowulf. We follow Hillock, Beowulf said. Break bread at his side, and I am Beowulf. My errand is for Helfaldane's great son, Hrothgar, to hear your glorious lord. If he chooses to receive us, we will greet him and salute the chief of the Danes and speak out our message. So, in other words, I'll tell the boss. Wulfgar replied, a prince born to the Swedes and famous for both strength and wisdom. So, don't forget, who's Wulfgar? That's the herald and captain, Hrothgar's herald and captain. And he's also famous for strength and wisdom. Our warm-hearted lord will be told of your coming, and I shall tell our king, our giver of bright rings, and hurry back with his word, and speak it here, however he answers your request. He's being polite. I'll go tell the boss. He went quickly to where Hrothgar sat, gray and old, in the middle of his men. So remember, he could see where he's going. This is a room full of people. So he goes over to where Hrothgar is, and knowing their custom of that court, walked straight to the king's great chair, stood waiting to be heard, and when he was acknowledged, then he spoke, there are Geats who have come sailing the open ocean to our land, come far over the high waves, led by a warrior called Beowulf. And they wait on your word, bring messages for your ears alone, my lord. Grant them a gracious answer, and see them and hear what they've come for. Their weapons and armor are nobly worked. These men are no beggars, and Beowulf is their prince who showed them the way to our shores. He's a mighty warrior, powerful and wise. So Wulfgar is saying that. Now, how does he know that? He just met the guy. Well, the way he talked, the weapons that they brought, the way they acted politely, they put their shields aside and sat down on benches, right? These are not beggars. This is a warrior. So he knows from their actions, these people seem legitimate. So he's telling the boss, maybe you should hear what they got to say, right? The Danes' high prince in chapter 6, the Danes' high prince and protector said, I knew Beowulf as a boy. You see how these tribes are intertwined? His father was Ethgo, who was given Hethered's one daughter, Hethered, and Hilgret's father. And now Ethgo's brave son is here, come visiting in a friendly king? And I've heard that when seamen came bringing their gifts and presents to the Geeks, that they wrestled and ran together. And Hilgek's young prince showed them a mighty battle grip, and his hands moved with 30 men's strength. So now Hrothgar is telling Wulfgar, excuse my gars, I got to get these names straight, right? That he's hurt. He met Beowulf. He knew him when he was a kid. And this guy is strong. He's got the strength of 30 men. Our Holy Father has sent him as a sign of his grace, a mark of his favor to help us defeat Grendel and end that terror. I shall greet him with treasures, gifts to reward his courage in coming to us. Now remember, he doesn't even know, if Beowulf could, do this, help him, but he knows him, he remembers his strength, at least the stories of his strength, and he's going to give him gifts, even before the action takes place. And I tell them, too, how welcome we will make them. Tell them how welcome. So Wulfgar went to the door, and he addressed the waiting seafarers with soldiers' words. My lord, the great king of the Danes, commands me to tell you that he knows of your noble birth, and that coming to him from over the open seas, that you have come bravely and are welcome. And now, go to him as you are, in your armor and helmets, But leave your battle shields here and your spears, and let them lie waiting for the promises that your words may make. So don't take any weapons with you, just in case we're wrong. Beowulf arose with his men around him, ordering a few to remain with their weapons. You see how careful he is? Ordering a few to remain with their weapons. And leading the others quickly along Herod's steep roof into Hrothgar's presence, and standing on the prince's own hearth, helmeted, the silvery metal of his mail shirt gleaming with a smith's high art. So these are decorated armor, smith's high art, right? They're pounded in with beautiful armor. He greeted the Danes' great lord. Hail, Hrothgar! Hillik is my cousin and my king. That's his uncle, Hillik. The days of my youth have been filled with your glory. And now Grendel's name has echoed in our land, and sailors have brought us stories of Herod, the best of mead halls, deserted and useless when the moon hangs in the skies and the sun is lit. Light and life fleeing together. My people have said, the wisest, most knowing, and best of them, that my duty was to go to the Danes' great king. They have seen my strength for themselves, and they have watched me rise from the darkness of war, dripping with my enemy's blood. So he's telling Hrothgar he's a fighter. I drove 5 giants into chains. I chased all of that race from the earth. This was like a lot of lore in those days, that there were giants in the earth. But Beowulf drove them. I swam into the blackness of night, hunting monsters out in the ocean and killing them one by one. Death was my errand and the fate that they had earned. And now Grendel and I are called together. So I've come. Grant me then, O Lord protector in this noble place, a single request. I have come so far, O shelterer of warriors and your people's beloved friend, that this one favor you should not refuse me, that I alone, with the help of my men, may purge all evil from this hall. I have heard, too, that the monster's scorn of men is so great that he needs no weapons and he fears none. Well, nor will I. My lord Hilgek might think less of me if I let my sword go where my feet were afraid to, or if I hid behind some broad linden shield. My hands alone shall fight for me, struggle for my life against that monster. God must decide who will be given to death's cold grip. That's a beautiful line. God must decide who will be given to death's cold grip. So Beowulf's offering to fight Grendel with his hands. Grendel's plan, I think, will be what it has been before, to invade this hall, gorge his belly with our bodies. And if he can, right, I think if my time have come, there will be nothing to mourn over. There will be no corpse to prepare for its grave, because Grendel will carry out bloody flesh to the moors, crunch on our bones, and smear torn scraps of our skin on the walls of his den. Oh, what writing? No, I don't expect no Danes will fret about sewing our shrouds. If he wins. So in other words, if he wins, I don't think the Danes will regret sewing our shrouds. That's the burial shrouds. And if death does take me, send the hammered mail of my armor to Hilak, return the inheritance that I have from Hethril, and he from Wayland. Fate will unwind as it must. Remember, they love their armor, they love their swords, they love their weapons. So if he's not successful in this venture, he's asking Hrothgar to send his armor back for him, right? A mead hall is a large sacred building made of wood that serves as a central location for culture and celebrations. Okay? Got it? All right. Chapter 7. Hrothgar replied, protector of the Danes, Beowulf, you've come to us in friendship and because of the reception your father found at our court. Ethgrol had begun a bitter feud, killing Halef, a wolfing warrior, and your father's countrymen were afraid of war. If he returned to his home and they turned him away, and then he traveled across the curving waves to the land of the Danes. And I was new to the throne, and then a young man ruling this wide kingdom in its golden city. Hergar, my older brother, a far better man than I, had died, and dying made me, second among Helfendane's sons, first in the nation. And I brought the end of Ethgrol's quarrel. In other words, he settled the dispute. Ethgrol is what? Beowulf's father. Sent ancient treasures through the ocean's furrows to the wolfings. Your father swore he would keep the peace. My tongue grows weary, and my heart, when I try to tell you what Grendel has brought us. So he's trying to say the feud is over. We don't have anything against you, Beowulf. But this Grendel has the damage that he's done in this hall. You see for yourself how much smaller our ranks have become. Why? Grendel's eating them. And can guess what we've lost to his terror. Surely the Lord Almighty could stop his madness, smother his lust. And how many times have my men, glowing with courage, drawn from too many cups of ale, sworn to take after that dark and stem that horror with the deep sweep of their swords. And then in the morning, this mead hall, glittering with new light, would be drenched with blood. The benches stained red. The floor. So sometimes his men would, get courage from ale and go after Grendel, but then in the morning, the mead hall would be drenched with blood, the benches stained red, the floors all wet from the fiend's savage assault. And my father and my soldiers would be fewer still, death taking more and more. But to the table, Beowulf. Let's have a banquet in your honor, and let us toast your victories and talk of the future. And then Hrothgar's men gave places to the Geats, and they yielded benches to the brave visitors and led them to the feast. And the keeper of the mead, Hrothgar, came carrying out craven flasks, not Hrothgar, pardon me, the keeper of the mead, carved, flasks. So he's bringing them hand-carved drinking utensils, right? And he poured the bright sweetness. And a poet sang, and from time to time in a clear, pure voice, and the Danes and the visiting Geats celebrated as one and drank and rejoiced. Whew. So they buried the hatchet, and they've come to do battle with Grendel. Learn more about Beowulf by watching and reading part 3. This was part 2 of Beowulf. You've been reading with Jimmy. This is, again, part 2. We're going to go to part 3. And guess who's coming in part 3? Yep. Be sure to visit and read other classics. Any emails? Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. So I hope you're following this. We got Beowulf showing up to help Hrothgar, fight this evil monster who eats his men, keeps eating his men. And despite he just eating it. And so Beowulf has promised, keep this in mind, that he's going to just use his hands. It's very important to understand that. And that's what Hrothgar remembers, that Beowulf has the strength of 30 men. So he's a strong guy. You've been reading with Jimmy. Thanks again. Stay safe. Stay away from Grendel. Stay away from Grendel.